Welcome on into a live edition of Falcons Today. Appreciate all of you guys hanging out with us as we run through some of the big storylines coming out of OTAs and going into mandatory minicamp. So a lot of good football content to get to on today's video. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes, as I like to say, for today's show, shout out your city for me down below in the chat. I appreciate all of you guys who are hanging out with us in the dog days of the NFL offseason. We've got a little bit more to chew on with mandatory minicamp around the corner. And then after that, it's a boring 6-7 week break until training camp gets here. And then we got to get through the August summer days into the NFL regular season. So shout out your city. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I've got Ty Man the Buckeye being the first one in the chat. Shout out to Ty Man. Ryan is also here. Robert, good afternoon or maybe good morning, depending on where you're watching from. Our very first president, George Washington. Rise up, Falcons fans. Also tuning in from Macon, Georgia. Marlon's in the house. Good to see you, Marlon. What's up, Petey and the Falcons chat fam? Tracy, California. Taylor Gentry saying rise up. Philip is in Augusta, Georgia. Rich is in Tampa, Florida. I've got Ray watching from Baton Rouge. Dante is in Atlanta, Georgia. Anthony is in Decatur, Georgia. I was in Decatur. What is today? Thursday. I was in Decatur last Friday. Had a friend's wedding in Roswell, and then got stranded for about 38, roughly 40 hours at Hartsfield, Atlanta Airport. Flight got canceled not once, not twice, but 3 times. Had to go from Atlanta to Charlotte, Charlotte to DFW. Got in at 1:30 in the morning on Tuesday when I was supposed to get home at about noon on Sunday. So not an ideal traveling experience, but that's what you get for not flying Delta out of Atlanta. So kind of signed up for that, I think, looking back on it. Ed is in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Wilson is in Montgomery. I've got Taylor in Florida. Jamal's in Houston. Robert, happy birthday, dude. Appreciate you watching on your birthday. How old are you? Hopefully you're not like 8 or I'm going to feel like a pedophile. But Robert, appreciate you once again for watching. Savannah, Georgia's here. Shockwave, Atlanta's in the house. And I've got Mr. Green watching from Riverdale, Georgia. Now, one of the best players on this roster, without a doubt in my eyes, is Drake London. Very excited for what he can accomplish in 2024. So let me know, will Drake London reach 1,000 yards this year? He has yet to get there through 2 NFL seasons, but he's also had, well, let's be honest, Mariota, Desmond Ridder, and Taylor Heineke throwing him the rock. So hasn't been the smoothest of sailing from a quarterback wide receiver perspective. But with Kirk Cousins there, I think Drake London's not just going to get past 1,000 yards. I think he'll be closer to 1,300 yards. I mean, that's a big bar. Don't get me wrong. We're adding 400 more yards than what he did last year. But will Drake London reach 1,000 yards? Give me a yes. Give me a no. Mason B. watching from Denver. Appreciate you, Mason. President Washington says yes. Anthony says yes. Tony says yes. Jamal, easy yes. Jamal, I agree. When I wrote this, I thought, is this kind of just too simplistic of a question? But, I mean, it's been 2 years. He hasn't done it yet, so I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he's a lock for 1,000 yards. I definitely think he's going to have a really strong year with Kirk Cousins throwing him the rock, but I think it's somewhat up for grabs. Jamal, this is the year to grab Pitts in fantasy. I don't know if Jamal has access to my Google Docs, but we're going to have a similar, I wouldn't say debate, but just topic to discuss later on in the video. And with that in mind, actually, Jamal, you took the words out of my mouth here. Which Falcon do you want to draft the most in fantasy football? Every single year, all 32 fans, for the most part, kind of become suckers to the skill position players on their favorite team when it comes to fantasy football drafts. And listen, no one cares about your fantasy team. We're still a long ways away from even talking about fantasy football drafts. But I think this is a good way to just simplify. When you look at Bijan, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, like, who do you think is going to have the best year? And it's not easy to compare wide receivers and running backs, but fantasy football does give you a slight pathway to comparing those two position groups. So who do you want on your team? Like, who do you feel like, you know what, this guy's going to ball out and I don't want to miss out on him? For me, I think I'd go with Drake London. I also think he's probably going to go a little bit later in drafts like related to his position group than where Bijan will go with the running backs and Pitts will go with the tight ends. Like, I think Bijan's going to be one of the first 5 running backs taken. Pitts will be one of the first 6 tight ends taken. And then London, I think, will be one of the first 13, 14 wide receivers taken. So from that value perspective, I really like Drake London. So which Falcon do you want to draft the most? Jamal says it's Bijan, then Pitts. Anthony going with Bijan. And then Marlon, I like your answer of Kirk Cousins. I have always been the advocate for don't take a quarterback until round 10. The quarterback wide receiver combo you can get by going wide receiver in round 3, quarterback in round 10, gets you way more points than going quarterback in round 3, wide receiver in round 10. So I always like waiting on quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins has been my fantasy quarterback probably like 4 years, 4 times the last like 5 or 6 years, because he's always there staring at me in the face in round 9, and I come crawling back to him. Let's see. Taylor says Bijan and London. Ronan, appreciate you bringing this up. When is our guy throwing some drinks down? So the initial timeline was this weekend, and we could still do that, but I was thinking, I'm not trying to weasel my way out of this, I promise. I don't think it's as fun for you guys to spend your Friday night watching me drink, because you probably have plans and more fun things to do. So I kind of felt like a middle of the week night would be better for this, like next Tuesday or Wednesday. So we were going to discuss this on tomorrow's episode, but we can just have the conversation now. What do you guys think? Like, just honest, I know this kind of dragged on, and just a combination of me going on a pledge of sobriety and having back-to-back wedding weekends. It just really created a clusterfuck of a schedule for me, but it's all open-ended from here on out. So I think like a Tuesday or Wednesday night would be much more entertaining for you guys to watch me suffer and go through Taka and Everclear than like your Friday or Saturday night, because you're going to have fun that night anyway. So I feel like middle of the week is a little bit more entertaining for everyone involved. But feel free to chime in the comment section. By the way, we're going to have a mailbag later on in today's episode. So use hashtag Falcons right now to get your question on screen. Our producer, Ree Barkus, can pull the questions from the comment section that have hashtag Falcons in it. Or if you want to skip the line, guarantee your spot on screen, you can super chat. I know Marlon Kuzi has been a frequent flyer in the super chat gang. Not sure if I see anyone else in the chat, but maybe I'm just missing 1 or 2 people. I think Ed Garrett potentially, but Ed, you could correct me if I'm wrong. So if you want to guarantee your spot on screen, super chat, and we will throw it on for everyone watching to see. So include a question, a take, a comment, an idea, whatever tickles your fancy, and we'll make sure all of our wonderful, beautiful viewers will get to go see it. Okay, time man, enjoy your party. We will catch up later, my friend. Coming up on today's show, OTAs, winners and losers, minicamp preview, and then that mailbag I was just talking about. Okay, no. Wait, Ed says, nope, I am a frequent flyer. Okay, so is that a yes or a no? Because now you confused me. Rich, I'm not making excuses. I had legitimate reasons beforehand. I can prove the sobriety because there's a ring on my now fiance's finger, so that checks out. And then I had back-to-back weddings of my sister and then my now fiance's best friend from high school. So those 2 weekends just like knocked it out. But we are an open calendar from now on. We're going to get this done. Plus, we're about to hit the really, really boring portion of the off season. So this will actually get us something to look forward to. I think more so you. You don't want to, run through all the bullets in the chamber and then mini camp's over and it's like, well, what do we do now? We don't even have the drunk PD live to look forward to. So I feel like this is kind of a win-win for all scenarios and all parties involved. Are we ready to jump into a live show, though? We've got 61 people hanging out with us. Thank you all so much. Only 16 likes, though. Don't make me beg. No one likes begging for likes, but it does help the channel a ton. So if you just meant to like the video, but you forgot to, use this as a reminder to like the video. Larry David. I'm rewatching Curb Your Enthusiasm. He threw a whole hissy fit because he wasn't reminded. Okay. Are we ready to get into the video? Up to 24 likes? We'll take it. We can get one more like, 25. Nice clean number. And then we'll jump into some OTAs, organized team activities, winners and losers. Okay. At 26 likes, let's get this show on the road. Welcome on in to another edition of Falcons Today. On today's episode, we're going to run through some winners and losers from Atlanta Falcons organized team activities. Now that those are wrapped up with pretty much, we felt like it'd be a good time to just recap it in a very fun, digestible way. Now, when it comes to winners and losers, don't read too heavily into who's a winner and who's a loser, right? These are non-padded practices. They are heavy install for a new offense and a new defense. But I just think this is a good way to kind of consolidate and a fun way to digest who had a nice few weeks at OTAs and maybe who didn't have the best time. But it's still very early. We're a long ways away from just training camp. So by no means do I want you guys to make mountains out of these hills. But our first winner from OTAs, I've got to go with Kirk Cousins. It was Falcons fans' first opportunity to see the next quarterback, the $180 million man. And sure, there was a decent level of skepticism, and fairly so, for a 35-year-old guy coming off a torn Achilles. But from what I saw and from what I read and heard, zero signs of rust or fatigue or him just not rehabbing all that well from a ruptured Achilles. We saw the velocity. We saw the accuracy on his passes. If an alien came down to earth and watched Kirk Cousins, I don't think that alien would think, that guy looks like someone who torn his Achilles back in like late October, early November. No, we didn't see any of that. So Falcons fans, you should be excited for what is to come for Kirk Cousins this year, because based on what he's done the last 4 years of his NFL career, I mean, the guy was on pace for yet another 4,000-plus yard season. I think that would have been 5 in a row, for sure 4 in a row. So, yeah, there is a lot to be excited about when it comes to Captain Kirk. Of course, the big question is, how long will you have this great quarterback play? Because, sure, it hasn't resulted in a boatload of wins in Minnesota, and it's going to be up to the Falcons coaching staff to capitalize on borderline top 10 quarterback play, which is not easy to come by as much as you might think based on, I mean, just ask Arthur Blank about that the last 3 years. The last year of Ryan, Mariota, Heineke, Ritter, I mean, Kirk Cousins, I mean, just completely dwarfs all of that kind of quarterback play the last 3 or 4 years in Atlanta. Now, before we get on to the next winner and loser in today's video, if you are a diehard Falcons fan, 24/7, 365, or in this case, 366 days a year, then come hang out with us for the rest of the off season. We got 22,000 plus strong here. We have fun on the channel. I like to give out some takes. Don't bat 1,000. Like I said, Dallas Turner would be a Falcon. Didn't happen. So I've got a drunk live show coming up here where I'm going to get obliterated as a punishment for Dallas Turner getting past the Atlanta Falcons. More on that to come a little bit, but we're looking at the middle of next week just because I was going to initially do it over the weekend, and then I felt like you guys probably have fun things to do on your Friday and Saturday night, at least better things to do than watch me get drunk on YouTube Live. So I'm sure you have your Tuesday and Wednesday nights wide open. So that felt like a pretty good time to do it. So keep your eyes peeled for that over the next few days. First loser I've got from OTAs, I'll go with Richie Grant. And this is a bit harsh, and there's some really positive news that came out from OTAs regarding Richie Grant, but one of the big picture items for the Atlanta Falcons coming out of OTAs was DeMarco Hellams has kind of taken over as the starting strong safety opposite of Jesse Bates, which is where Richie Grant started off a year ago today and ultimately lost his job to the 7th-round pick out of Alabama. Now, it's kind of a good news, bad news situation here for Richie Grant and DeMarco Hellams. Well, mostly just Richie Grant here. The good news is I don't think Richie Grant is out of a job. He may be out of a starting job, but I don't think he's going to lose his job, okay? Whereas I think with a new DC and new head coach and Raheem Morris and Jimmy Lake, there's been some positivity around Richie Grant, word for word, from Raheem Morris, but I feel like there are some concerns about whether or not this guy's going to be a starter in the NFL. When I think about Richie Grant and what I can expect to see out of the Atlanta Falcons defense this year, I think we'll see a lot of 3 safety looks. That's something Raheem Morris did a lot in LA. So because of that, I think there is a job for Richie Grant. I just don't think it's a starting gig anymore. So that's why I have him down as a loser, because we saw DeMarco Hellams kind of go out with that first-team defense, and that gives you your first kind of snapshot, sneak peek to what to expect out of the 22 starters for the Falcons in 2024. But there's a lot of football to be played. Nothing is set in stone. Moving on to our second winner for OTAs. Let's go with cornerback Clark Phillips. I wanted to put Clark Phillips first because I felt like pound for pound, he's probably the biggest winner. But it's Kirk Cousins. How do you not lead with that? But Clark Phillips, by a lot of takes and a lot of analysis, has been one of the best storylines coming out of OTAs. I mean, he's battling for a starting gig opposite of A.J. Terrell, and you can see that he's kind of firmly established himself as the CB2, especially when A.J. Terrell was out with a tight hamstring. Clark Phillips kind of took over as the number one cornerback, and this was a big question mark going into the spring practices and whatnot of who would be the starter opposite of Terrell. Would it be Antonio Hamilton? Would it be former first-round pick Mike Hughes? Would they address it in the draft? No. They went with Clark Phillips, who they took in round 4 last year out of Utah. We didn't see a lot from Phillips to begin 2023. Remember, it was Jeff Okudah taking pretty much every snap at CB2. Ultimately, the Falcons phased out Jeff Okudah and went with the young guy Phillips, who had some nice moments, had some really good games, like the Jets game comes to mind, and sure, had some not-so-great moments, but we can't be too critical of rookies. You're just never going to get anywhere if you pull the plug every time a rookie makes a mistake. But tackling in a zone defense is definitely a question for Clark Phillips that I'm curious to see if he can answer, especially when you look at what Raheem Morris and the Rams did and what to kind of expect a little bit from Jimmy Lake. We'll get some better looks at it when preseason football rolls around, and it'll probably take some regular season games to have a good idea as to what the identity of this Falcons defense will look like. But I'm expecting more of a shift from man to zone. And when you move to a zone defense, right, you try to keep the ball in front of you, and that means wrapping up in open space. And Clark Phillips at Utah, he was a really good ball hawk corner. Not quite sold on him being an efficient tackler. And that's going to be something he has to work on. And if he can execute, he's got himself a starting job in the NFL. Now, some quick trivia I want to ask before we get to the rest of our winners and losers. Who is the Falcons' interception leader from 2010 to present? Let me know down below in the comment section. We will reveal the answer for you at the end of the video. But Falcons' interception leader combined seasons from 2010 to present day. Second loser, I'm going to go with Lorenzo Carter. Similar to Richie Grant, I just want people to lower their muskets and remind themselves that it's just a fun-ish way to consolidate what we learned and what we saw at OTAs. And what we saw a little bit of was, well, we saw Bradley Anae, who was recently added by the Falcons, former Dallas Cowboy, take some reps opposite of Arnold Ebiketie with the first-team defense. Am I overreacting? 100%. I acknowledge that. I am definitely kind of getting ahead of my skis a little bit here. But still, for Lorenzo Carter, you should be able to hold on and get the first-team reps with the first-team defense when there's not a whole lot of tough competition at that position. In all reality, they probably were just doing a little bit of a rotation, but still, this just kind of raises a little bit of a question mark in my eyes as to Lorenzo Carter was a starter in 2022. Last year, we saw him regress and just kind of have a smaller role with the Falcons altogether. Bud Dupree's gone, so Lorenzo Carter should theoretically pop back up to the top of the depth chart. But if you're not seeing that with Carter and you're already testing out Bradley Anae, I'm going to be a little bit concerned. If we're talking about pressures, because the Falcons need to generate more of that, maybe the plan for Atlanta is to just generate pressure from the interior defensive line. I'm sure there were a handful of guys in the draft and in free agency the Falcons wanted to get to address their long-lasting pass rushing woes, but they probably didn't have the opportunity to get the guys they wanted to in the draft when they were on the clock. And the players that they circled and highlighted in free agency all went for more than they were willing to spend. And I'm hoping the reason why they didn't really make a major addition at pass rusher was because they didn't want to reach in the draft and they didn't want to overspend in free agency. So with that being said, it's going to be up to the interior defensive line for the Falcons to generate some pressure, right? Zach Harrison will probably be a little bit of a floater between being a 5 technique defensive end, maybe hopping inside to 3 technique as well. But David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett, Rukororo, the second-round pick out of Clemson, maybe even a little bit of Braylon Trice from the outside, but also like Brandon Dorlus, just Contavious Street. I can go on and on. They're going to need some pressure from the interior because I don't think they're going to get a sufficient amount from Lorenzo Carter and Arnold Ebiketie by themselves. Now, before we look at my final winner from OTAs, if you want to up your Atlanta Falcons wardrobe, go to chatsports.com/Falcons combo. You're not just going to get one shirt, you're going to get 2 shirts, and it's 25% off. So if you want to get some more Falcons merch in your life or you want to gift to someone else, this makes for an awesome gift. Plus, take it one step further, order it to your own home, separate the 2 shirts. Now you got 2 gifts right there, 25% off. I'm doing future you a favor right now. I put this link in the comments and description of today's video. Now, I wanted to end this episode on a very light, happy note because why not? And I'm going to go with our final winner from OTAs, fantasy football owners. I don't really love talking about fantasy football on the channel just because if you don't have a Falcons player on your team, you don't care about it. But we haven't drafted yet, so maybe you will care a little bit more. I think we're going to see a big rise from the Falcons' top playmakers and skill position guys in 2024. Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts. You can look at what they were producing last year and their fantasy rank in non-PPR leagues, and none of them sniffed the top 10. Bijan was the closest, I guess, but still, like, underwhelming to say the least on all fronts, I think, for what preseason expectations were for the 3 players in 2023 and the reality after 2023. But with better quarterback play, Kirk Cousins is definitely going to boost the numbers of Drake London and Kyle Pitts. And I think Raheem Morris and this coaching staff are going to have a greater focus on their star players than maybe Arthur Smith did. And I also think with this defense not being superb on like a top 10 defense, Falcons are likely going to find themselves in a lot of high-scoring shootout affairs. What does that mean? It means they're going to be passing the ball in the fourth quarter a lot. That's good for fantasy owners of Kirk Cousins, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. And I think Bijan's just going to get a higher percentage workload than last year where he was having like a 60-40 split with Tyler Algier. I think it's going to look a lot more like 75-25. So even Bijan's going to see a big uptick in his production. So I think we're going to see a lot better numbers for all of our fantasy football owners this year for the Falcons' top weapons. Now, of those 3 guys, and we can talk to Kirk Cousins as well, which Atlanta Falcon do you want to draft the most? Which guy are you not going to let get past you in your league? If that means reaching on him a round or 2 early, so be it. You're just that adamant and confident this guy is going to be a bona fide star at his position. For me, I think it's Drake London. Guy's been knocking on the door of 1,000 yards for back-to-back seasons with Desmond Ridder, Heineke, and Mariota as his quarterback. Give him Kirk Cousins. I smell 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. By the way, that trivia question from earlier. Last guesses? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? It is William Moore. He had 16 interceptions from 2010 to 2015. Hand up, I didn't get this one right. My guess was Desmond Trufant. He was second with 13 interceptions. So let me know if you got the question correct. No cheating down below in the comment section. But that will do it for us on today's video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Appreciate all of you who watch our content. We'll sign off and see you all later. Which Falcon do you want to draft the most? It's not Ricardo Allen. I didn't guess Ricardo. Like I said, I went with Trufant. But Allen had, I think, like 11 or 12. He wasn't too far off, but he wasn't, just one away. Did Ed Garrett get it right? Let's go, Ed. That's what I'm talking about, Ed. Look at that. We got some bright minds in the building. Jason, could see Jason. We got some super chats, by the way, I saw fly in. So we'll get those on screen for you in just a moment. Taylor says Bijan. Yeah. The thing with Bijan is that he's going to have to be your first-round pick. So you just got to be absolute. Like, I'm more absolute about Drake London in round 3 than Bijan in round 1. That's all. Anthony with a $10 super chat. Let's go, Anthony. What are the chances the Falcons pick up Corey Davis as a free agent and sign one more defensive player? My preference is safety Justin Simmons. What do you think? Chances not super high. I think when they come out of minicamp, they'll have a lot of tape to watch on the wide receivers. And let's be honest, OTAs and minicamp, they are like flag football on steroids. But the defense can't make contact. The cornerbacks can't jam wide receivers. So wide receivers should dominate. And so if the Falcons coming out of minicamp look at their receivers going, they did okay, that's a bad response because they should be dominating when the defense has both hands tied behind their backs, basically. So that would be a possible avenue for the Falcons to add another wide receiver, although they got Darnell Mooney and Rondale Moore. I think they have big plans for Kyle Pitts as basically a wide receiver. They may feel somewhat content in that regard. As for Justin Simmons, I think they're pretty happy with DeMarco Hellams. I mean, he's going to be 1/10 the price as Justin Simmons. And Justin Simmons is 3 or 4 or 5 times better than DeMarco Hellams. He's been the NFL interception leader since 2016. But they may not feel like dollar for dollar he's that much better than DeMarco Hellams. So that's why I think we may not see a Justin Simmons signing. But don't get me wrong. If they added Justin Simmons, I think that would be awesome for the Falcons. You get Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons, arguably 2 of the 5 best safeties in the NFL on your defense. How can you not be excited about that? Ed Garrett, what's going on, man? I read that Russell Gage is a free agent. He's only 28 and seems to still be useful. Thoughts on bringing him in for a look? I like that. Russell Gage is a free agent. He missed all of last year in Tampa with, I believe, a torn ACL that he suffered in training camp. But it wasn't too long ago. 6th-round pick by the Falcons, put together back-to-back 700-plus yard receiving seasons in 2020 and 2021, and then was in Tampa in 2022 and 2023. Yes. So I'm not opposed at all. And I think that's a really good idea. We'll definitely include both of these questions, Reed, by the way, in our mailbag because they're both excellent thoughts and proposals. So, Ed, appreciate it. By no means am I dismissing the idea of signing Russell Gage. I'm all for it. I think that'd be a fun signing to this wide receiver unit here. All right. Are we ready? Oh, Archangel's in the chat. Good to see you, Archangel. Okay, next up on the show, I want to do a minicamp preview. That's the next thing on the Falcons' schedule until summer break is here. And then we don't see them until July. I don't know if they've come out with training camp dates yet. If they did, I just missed it. But it's usually like July 30, 31. So we won't see them for about 6 weeks or so. Okay, are we ready to jump into our second story? All right, let's get into another edition of Falcons Today. What's going on, everyone? Coming up on today's show, I want to run through the top 3 storylines for the Atlanta Falcons going into mandatory minicamp. This will be the last time we see the team until training camp. So it's a good idea to get a quick snapshot as to what the 2024 Falcons will look like. So the first storyline I'm excited to watch for is Kirk Cousins and his wide receivers. Obviously, all eyeballs are going to be on number 18, right? For a handful of reasons. One, everyone is hoping he is the solution to the Falcons' quarterback problem for the last 3 or so seasons. And then also, he's a $180 million man. So, yeah, people are going to be excited to see what he can bring to the table. And on top of that, how does he look coming off a torn Achilles? That's going to be a big question mark. But I think we're all excited to see the chemistry that he can develop with his wide receivers. Kirk Cousins, by all accounts, has looked really good at OTAs so far, or at OTAs now going into mandatory minicamp. So I'm excited to see that strong play continue, but the velocity, the accuracy, it has been present at OTAs, and he doesn't look like a quarterback coming off a ruptured Achilles whatsoever in my eyes. But the big question is, can he quickly gel with his new wide receivers? I don't think there'll be an issue with Drake London. Both of these guys are some of the best players at their positions. And then Darnell Mooney and Rondale Moore, these are some speedsters, right? I think Rondale Moore is going to be used a little bit more as a gadget-type wide receiver. But Darnell Mooney, I mean, he had a 1,000-yard season with the Bears back in 2021. I can kind of already close my eyes and picture the play fake to Bijan and the deep ball to Darnell Mooney. But wide receivers, they need to win at mandatory minicamp. If you don't see positive things about the wide receivers at minicamp, red flags should be going off. There's no contact. There's no pads. The corners can't jam the receivers. It's flag football, and it's shifted to the offense. They have to win. They are designed to win. It is curated for the offense. Defense can't sack the quarterback. Quarterbacks can't contact the receivers. So if we don't see a great show from the wideouts at minicamp, I think there should be some more conversations had about Atlanta going out and adding another wide receiver as they gear up for an extremely pass-happy Zach Robinson offense that uses 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers, the most in the NFL last season. Now let me ask you guys this question. Will Drake London finally reach 1,000 yards? I think he will, and I don't think it'll be all that close. I don't think he'll be one of those 1,015-yard guys. I think he's going to crush it. I think he's going to go over 1,200 yards. But give me your thoughts down below in the comment section. Second storyline I'm excited to watch for is Bijan Robinson's role. There was that quote that came out from OTAs about the Falcons wanting to use Bijan Robinson as in a Christian McCaffrey type setting, and everyone started foaming at the mouth about what Bijan can look like in this Falcons offense. Here's what new offensive coordinator Zach Robinson said about Bijan. Yeah, I think Bijan is such a talented player. He's going to play running back first and foremost, and then any way we can find creative ways to get him the ball like the Niners do with Christian McCaffrey is exactly right. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to see an apples-to-apples comparison for Bijan and Christian McCaffrey in 2024, but I do think we'll see a little bit more creativity put into what Bijan's role is in the offense. He comes off a 976-yard rushing season, 487 receiving yards. That was 5th in the NFL amongst running backs. Christian McCaffrey, by the way, finished like 2nd or 3rd. So McCaffrey only had about 570 receiving yards last year. So Bijan, if you're looking to make the comparison as a receiving threat, just like Christian McCaffrey is, he's already very close to CMC in that department. But as a new coaching staff, you got to think, if you were to inherit a running back that was picked in the top 10 of the NFL draft, why wouldn't you just run him into the ground? And I know that's not a nice thing to say about Bijan, but just think about it for a moment. If things with Bijan don't go superb, you're not on the hook for it. Like Raheem Morris isn't. He didn't make that selection. So you were gifted a running back in a spot where people are very critical about using a draft pick on a position like that. Why not take advantage of not being responsible for the pick, but reaping the rewards of having a really good running back, and yet you weren't the one that paid for it, right? It's like going to a steakhouse, ordering a steak that is way overpriced, and it's not nearly as good as the $28 Texas Roadhouse steak. But if you're not the one that's on the bill, why not get that steak? I mean, that's not my best Colin Cowherd analogy, but they should absolutely use the shit out of Bijan Robinson this year. We're going to look at the next storyline in just a second, but first, if you want to get started with our awesome sponsor today, Prize Picks, listen up, because it's daily fantasy made easy, where all you have to do is pick 2 to 6 players and then choose more or less on their projected stats. Now, what does that mean in English? Basically, you can turn $10 into $1,000 if you go, say, 6 for 6 on your stat projections. Now, if you want to ride along with me, I've already locked in some season-long stat projections on some of the rookies taken. I like the more on Caleb Williams at 3,400 passing yards. I don't understand the J.J. McCarthy one whatsoever. Sam Darnold is the starting quarterback in Minnesota, and I think J.J. is a backup, is going to throw for 3,100 yards. Take the less on that. And then the Malik Neighbors highlights coming out of Giants OTAs in minicamp have been incredible. So, yeah, I'll take the more on 875 yards for Neighbors. Download Prize Picks today and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. But get started with Prize Picks today. It's the #1 daily fantasy sports platform in all of North America. I saw some like tribe in the Amazon rainforest just got internet. Wait until they discover Prize Picks. Then it's game over for them. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Third storyline I'm watching for training camp is the secondary depth chart. I kind of tossed and turned with this last one, and you can make an argument for just pass rush in general, but at minicamp with no pads on, just shells essentially, it's hard to really get a good idea as, who the pass rush is and how they're looking when they can't even tackle the quarterback. But the secondary, well, sure, it's also limited at OTAs. I don't think it's as limited as the guys in the trenches where they kind of just bump titties for a second or two, and then they all stand up and watch the quarterback throw the football. Whereas the secondary, well, yeah, it's not a fair fight. They do get an opportunity to make some plays on the football, pick off passes, break up passes, and I'm excited to see who goes where with the first and second team defense. The leader in the clubhouse for CB2 opposite of A.J. Terrell is second-year man Clark Phillips, fourth-round pick last year out of Utah. So if you want to sound smart in front of your friends, Clark Phillips. That's going to be a big buzzword throughout all of minicamp and into training camp as well. Another position that's kind of up for grabs right now is starting safety next to Jesse Bates. What's wrong with me? DeMarco Helms. So it was Richie Grant's job. Then he lost it for the last quarter of the 2023 season. The seventh-round pick out of Alabama, who we raved about last preseason. Remember, producer Roley, myself, we were all over the DeMarco Helms hype train. Fast forward to today, and the seventh-round man from Tuscaloosa is shaping up to be a starting safety in the NFL. So I'm excited to see how those battles unfold between Helms and Richie Grant, and then Clark Phillips and the rest of the corners like Mike Hughes, Antonio Hamilton, Kevin King. They didn't draft a corner, so the competition is not as fierce as I thought it would be. But for me, I'm still concerned about depth at the cornerback position, especially if you just kind of stick with me for a second, think about the absolute worst possible outcome, which is if A.J. Terrell were to get injured, this is your top 4 cornerbacks. And I don't think that's a unit that will suffice when the Falcons' pass rush is bottom 10 in the NFL. Right? Opposing quarterbacks are going to be standing in the pocket for a lot of time unless the Atlanta Falcons kind of pull a rabbit out of the hat and get insane production from Arnold Ebiketie, Lorenzo Carter, and their 3 rookie defensive linemen and Braylon Trice. Like, these DBs are going to have to hold up for a long time in coverage. So Kevin King is a question mark in terms of what he looks like after not playing football since 2021. He had a really good start to his career in Green Bay, but ultimately injuries just took the fun out of it for him, and I don't blame him. So he took a year away from football to kind of get healthy in 2022. Then he was ready to come back in 2023. He got injured while training, so he missed the last 2 years. And fast forward to 2024, here we are, waiting to see what Kevin King looks like. So what position do you guys think Atlanta should add to? After minicamp, you'll probably see a slight wave of free agent signings because teams have now had, 9, 10 OTA sessions, 3 minicamp practices to go, all right, we wanted to see how this first, second, or third-year player looked like. Ultimately, it didn't meet our expectations, and let's just go get a proven veteran who we know can do the job. But let me know what position you think the Falcons should add to. That will do it for us on today's show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Always appreciate those of you that hang out with us all the way to the end of the video. If you're still watching, drop an emoji in the comment section. I always love to see the end of the video crew. I'm a sucker for it, so you know who you are. And we will see you all on another edition of Falcons Today by Chat Sports. Will Drake London reach 1,000 yards? My biggest fan is here. Matthew Petey fan. Petey is the GOAT. The funny thing about this is, or this YouTube commenter, when I first started at Chat Sports, which will be 3 years in July, I know, yeah. Time flies. I had a very small role. I was not the host of Falcons Today, and there was a big fan of our Cowboys host, Tom Downey, who had like a similar name as his fan had a similar name as their YouTube handle. And I remember thinking like, I don't think I'll ever get to the point where everyone ever puts my name in a YouTube handle. And I promise it's not my burner. So here we are, 3 years later. Appreciate all of you guys for hanging out with us. We got Jack saying our DBs are insanely underrated every year. Atlanta has had the worst pass rush the past 10 plus years. I can see where you're coming from about like the pass rush is awful, yet the DBs don't get toasted. At the same time, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head, and this is not the only way to evaluate cornerbacks. When was the last time the Falcons as a team finished top 10 in interceptions? Jesse Bates had 6 last year. And as a team, I think they finished with like 12. A.J. Terrell did not have one. Nate Landman had 1 or 2. Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. I do. I mean, maybe it happened like 2 years ago, and I'm just a big dum-dum. Someone do the research for me, because it's tough for me to do in the middle of a live show. Last time Atlanta finished just top 10 in interceptions. We can even take a step further, like just top 16, like in the top half of the league in takeaways, interceptions. Which again, interceptions are the only way to evaluate corners and DBs, but it's a good metric to use. Nate Landman had the interception in the Cards game. I know he had 1. I just do remember he had a second one. Bates had 6. I know that. A.J. Terrell did not have a pick. Clark Phillips did not have a pick. Kentavious Street, didn't he have a pick? No, he had a fumble recovery in that Vikings game, his first game or so. Yeah, not an explosive unit when it comes to, takeaways and whatnot. We got a mailbag coming up next. So get your questions in right now. #Falcons, or you can super chat. We've gotten 2 super chats already. If you do super chat, we promise to include it in our mailbag. So everyone watching later on can see your question, your take, your comment, your idea, and you support the channel in the same process. So it's kind of a fun way to kill, 2 birds with 1 stone. Grant had 1 in the Bucks game. Okay, now it's coming back to me. Dude, we're almost counting them out by hand. We're at 8. Grant had 1. Landman had 1. Bates had 6. I know Terrell didn't. I know Phillips didn't. I don't think Jeff Okudah. I don't think Okudah had a pick last year. Right? Now I want to look it up. Okudah stats. I don't think he had a pick last year. No, he didn't. Yeah, no picks. Don't tell me 8's actually the total. No. There's got to be another one. Oh, I'll feel really sad. Don't tell me. 8, it can't be the total. They didn't actually have 8 interceptions last year, did they, as a team? That'd be the worst in the NFL. Stats, team. I'm nervous. Boys and girls, I'm nervous. Takeaways, interceptions. They had 8. And that's not even the worst. The Titans had 6. We just counted out all 8 picks right there. Oh, boy. That's a depressing thing to hear. Nope, that's it. That's it, folks. Nate Landman, Richie Grant, Jesse Bates. Only guys. Oh, boy. So, yeah. Jack, I hear what you're saying about the corners not having any help from the pass rush, but they're not making life easy for the pass rush with takeaways. So it can go both ways a little bit. Okay, let's get into our mailbag. #Falcons. Do we have enough questions right now? Or do we need some more questions? Producer Reed is on his 2nd live show ever. Everyone clap it up for Reed. Reed says we need some more. Get the weigh-in of the #Falcons or Super Chat up on screen so everyone can see it visually. A.J. Terrell has not had a pick the last 2 years. Now, again, that means a handful of things. People aren't throwing to him, right? That's definitely one factor. But still, you like to see a interception. Okay. So, #Falcons, or you can Super Chat if you are unable to afford a super chat, no problem at all. Just use hashtag Falcons. I'd like to see Matthew Petey fan use or get a question in with hashtag Falcons. Also going to call out former Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. Didn't know he was a Falcons fan, but he's in the chat right now. So, Mr. Johnson, can you get a question in as well? I'm going to put you guys on the hot seat. And then, does Jack Piazzi have a question in? Because Jack's been active in the chat. So, Jack, let's get your question on screen. Tony Wright is writing some novels in the chat, so why not put hashtag Falcons in as well? Okay. Remember the weigh-in. Let's get the weigh-in on screen of hashtag Falcons or Super Chat. That's what I meant. JB with the question. Appreciate you. We'll get these questions into the system and onto the screen in just a second here. Tony Wright, Ed, Jack, mailbag coming up next. Ask your questions now or forever hold your peace. Yeah. No, I mean hashtag Falcons or Super Chat to ask your questions. Remember we used it at the top of the show? There it is. That's the one. Okay. Yeah, we're getting there. Hashtag Falcons. Ethan, appreciate you. Okay. How do you feel about Brandon Stevens Raven CB2? What language are we talking? Brandon Stevens? I'm not familiar with his work. There he is. 3rd round pick from 2021. Ravens, I feel like, always put out good free agents. So I'm not opposed to any of that. Dave Joseph, is Rise Up going to be the calling card this year? I don't know why it wouldn't be. I would say that's a pretty good one, right? Am I missing something obvious right in front of my face? Dave Joseph, $2 super chat. Is Rise Up going to be the calling card? Are you saying from like the team? You know, like the team's like official motto? Yeah, I believe so. I haven't heard anything to say otherwise. So I'd be compelled to believe it'll be Rise Up. I don't know if it's one of like league-wide the most catchiest. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't think it's bad. I just think like a good way to maybe grade your team's slogan is if you ran into someone making small talk and you're like, oh, I'm a Falcons fan. So they go, Rise Up. You know what I mean? Like, some people know that for some teams.
I mean, I can see that, though.
Yeah.
I'm an Eagles fan, so it's like...
Eagles kind of quickly go like, go Birds.
Go Birds.
I also hate go Birds. You're an Eagle. Why do you get all Birds then?
But you can take Rise Up then. Because Rise Up is very, like, empowering.
Yeah, but I hate go Birds for Eagles fans. Go Eagles. Why did you, like, broaden?
Well, I don't know how that came about. I think that was 2017.
Yeah. It's not your fault, I know.
Yeah,
but
2017, all of a sudden everyone was like, go Birds. And it's like, and now everyone's like, go Birds.
Yeah, I feel like it's like go Cowboys, like go Humans. Like, it was already pretty specific. They picked one type of bird, but now it's like just go all the birds. Okay. I didn't realize there was a movement to move on from Rise Up. This is going to be a hot topic in our video today. Did not wake up thinking we'd be debating, is it time to move on from Rise Up?
So in the comments, take on the question. What's your new
do we need to come up with our own? We got to copyright this shit though. We're not giving it away for free.
No, in the comments though. Let's see what everyone has to say. What do you guys are some pretty creative people. I think you guys can come up with something better than Rise Up, better than Go Birds. Something that maybe with chains on Kirk.
Yeah. All right. Should we jump into our mailbag? All right. So we will hit all three of these super chats in the front half. Make sense? All right. Sounds good. Let's get into a live mailbag here on Falcons Today. Welcome on into a mailbag edition of Falcons Today. I'm answering questions that were asked during our live show, which airs every single Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. First question comes in from Chris Jeff. Do you think the Falcons should sign Stephon Gilmore? I feel like the Falcons should add some more depth at corner, but I think there is a lot more internal optimism about Clark Phillips, and I think that's perfectly warranted and fine. Like, there's probably a tendency amongst fans to quickly, move on from rookies if they don't have an awesome first year in the NFL, when in reality, you're never going to get anywhere if that's the case. So I think Phillips last year showed some really good play when he was called upon the last quarter or so of the season. And I'm okay with giving Clark Phillips the opportunity to start at CB2. My fear comes in if something were to happen to Phillips or A.J. Terrell. You can't bank on this pass rush getting to the quarterback so quickly, the ball comes out quickly. So depth is a concern, but I don't think you need to sign a starter like Stephon Gilmore. If you did, awesome. That'd be really cool too. But I think you can be confident in Clark Phillips starting for this team. Now, before we get on to the other questions on today's episode, name a random Falcons player for me, because I feel like Clark Phillips kind of has the making of oh yeah, I remember him. He started in his second year. What a random dude. Give me a random Falcons player down below in the comment section. Next question comes in via Super Chat from Anthony. Shout out to you, Anthony. What are the chances the Falcons pick up Corey Davis as a free agent? I'll stop right there and answer that first half of the question. Not super high. If minicamp doesn't wow the coaching staff from the receiver standpoint, that should be a concern, because the DBs, they can't do a whole lot. It's non-contact. There's no pads. They're not jamming the wide receivers. So the wide receivers should win 8 times out of 10 in minicamp. And if they're not, and it's 5 times out of 10, that's a problem, because once the pads come on, it'll go down from 5 to 4 to 3. And now we got a big problem on our hands. So I think if minicamp does not go, superb for the wide receivers, they should go to try to add someone like Corey Davis. All right, part 2 of the question. Should they sign one more defensive player? My preference is safety Justin Simmons. What do you think? I think all 32 teams should be interested in signing Justin Simmons. I have no earthly idea as to why Justin Simmons is still an NFL free agent. He is a top 5 safety in the NFL in my eyes. He's led the league in interceptions since he entered the league in 2016. So yeah, if they want to pair Jesse Bates with Justin Simmons, you have my full blessing. If they are confident in DeMarco Hellams, you also have my full blessing. I kind of view it as a win-win. Safety as a position is usually one of the last spots you fill out. When you think about where teams start to build a roster from, what goes first in the draft? Quarterbacks, edge rushers, offensive tackles, wide receivers, corners. Which position groups get the biggest paydays in free agency? Those 5 position groups. So safety is usually a luxury one. And that's why, sure, if they feel like DeMarco Hellams isn't up to the job and Jesse Bates' price is ridiculously dropped, that'd be an incredible safety tandem. But I'm also, like Clark Phillips, confident in rolling with a young guy like DeMarco Hellams at that spot. So you guys can let me know in the comment section what you would do if you were the Falcons. Can you roll with DeMarco Hellams, or do you feel like they need to go out and get someone like Justin Simmons? Ed Garrett, next one up. I read that Russell Gage is a free agent. He's only 28 and seems to still be useful. Thoughts on bringing him in for a look? I like it. I do. Russell Gage missed all of last year, unfortunately, due to an injury. But, of course, he put together back-to-back 700-plus yard seasons before going to Tampa Bay. This Falcons offense is going to be a much more heavy wide receiver offense than it has been the last 3 years under Arthur Smith. So even if there's not a spot for Russell Gage immediately, I think from a depth perspective, it's a position group you want to be extra deep at, right? Whereas in past years, you only really trotted out Drake London and Matt Collins. You could get by not having 3, 4, 5, 6 wide receivers. Now that's not the case. So yeah, I'd be on board with a Russell Gage reunion. Hopefully he's healthy and has recovered from his injury, but I'm not against it whatsoever. Dave Joseph, next one up. Is Rise Up going to be the calling card this year? I haven't heard anything that says otherwise, but I also, maybe I just have my head in the sand, wasn't aware, just going off the live chat in our live show at the moment, how many people are against the phrase, the term, the calling card, Rise Up. So I don't have an issue with it. I think a good way to measure if you've got a good team slogan is if when you tell someone, like a stranger for the first time, like, yeah, I'm a Falcons fan, do they say in response, oh, rise up? Or is that just something no one else knows? If no one else knows it, then it's probably not the best one. And maybe it's time to switch it up a little bit and kind of retire it with Matt Ryan. But I don't have like a beef with the rise up. The only thing I've got really a beef with from the team are the gradient uniforms. Those need to be put into a small closet and locked forever. Next question coming in from Is Villa. What players are game changers that can most likely take their play and our team to the next level? Not including not including Arnold and other players we know are amazing. I don't know who. Oh, Arnold Katie. I thought they were last names. Okay, game changers that can. So, I mean, you've got like your obvious stars, right? Drake London, Bijan, but guys that can. We know that aren't amazing. I would say like kind of a breakout candidate, as I think what you're kind of asking in a long-winded form. That could look like Clark Phillips. Like if he really locks down that CB2 job, him and AJ Terrell, if they kind of put together one of a better cornerback tandems in the NFL, that could be something that really alleviates a lot of pressure on the pass rush. Other spots that can kind of get to that level. What about like on the offensive line, Matthew Bergeron? He was a second-round pick last year. I thought he did pretty well for learning a whole new position altogether and pretty much being the starter right out of the gate once Matt Hennessy went down. So if he takes a big step forward, you get him and Chris Lindstrom, you're going to have a top-5 guard duo in the NFL, and that's going to be really fun for Kirk Cousins to stand behind. So I'll go with Bergeron and Clark Phillips. JB1521, and then we'll hear from our friends at Prize Picks. Have there been any sightings of 6'2" Anthony Johnson doing anything in camp? No. At least I have not heard. Remember, media gets to go to about 1 in every 3 to every 4 practices at OTAs. So there's a lot that goes down that we never get eyes on. And that's just, the way it works. So I have not heard or seen anything regarding Anthony Johnson. Before we get to the other questions on today's show, you know what to expect from our favorite friends over at Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Because all you've got to do at Prize Picks to turn $10 into $1,000 is pick 2 to 6 players and then choose more or less on their projected stats. You can win up to $1,000 by going 6 for 6. Now, they also have really fun deals throughout different days of the week, like Taco Tuesday, where they lower stat projections, or free entry Friday, where they return your entry even if you don't get it correct. So if you're looking for an example of what this looks like, take my season-long stat projections, where I got the more on Caleb Williams at 3,400 yards for the Chicago Bears, taking the less on J.J. McCarthy, because I think Sam Darnold will be this team's Week 1 starter and hold on to the job for maybe longer than the folks at Prize Picks think. Also, I like the more on Malik Neighbors at 875 receiving yards. So if you like my selections, feel free to download the app today and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video, but shout out to Prize Picks for supporting us here at Chat Sports. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Dat one Falcons fan. Will the Falcons have a 2016-like Super Bowl run and this time win it? The Super Bowl is in New Orleans. How ironic it would be that we win our first Soupy in enemy territory. I mean, no, because the 2015 Falcons were a good football team. Like, they were better than the 2023 Falcons, right? Where did the 2015 Falcons go? Just doing some quick research on the fly here, but the 2015 Atlanta Falcons went 8-8. So I guess not as far than the 2023 Falcons were, but still, I'm not quite sold on them having a Super Bowl run and Raheem Morris and Kirk Cousins' first year. Maybe year 2. Like, I don't even know, has a head coach gone to the Super Bowl in his first season? That seems like really good trivia that I'd love to know the answer to. But I'm going to go and say pump the brakes step one this year, I think, is to make the playoffs, right? Of course, the big goal is to win a playoff game, but let's just get Atlanta back in the dance and kind of get back in relevancy. Jack Piazzi, I really love the idea of signing Eddie Jackson. He can't tackle, but he's a ball hawk, and if Jesse goes down, we need another ball hawk. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of connections between Eddie Jackson and the Falcons, right? The Bears' old GM, Ryan Pace, who extended Eddie Jackson, works in the Atlanta Falcons front office now, and I feel like the secondary can use some more bodies in it altogether. Does the safety room need help? Not necessarily. I think Jesse Bates, DeMarco Hellams, and Richie Grant can put together a really nice safety trio, and that's mostly just because Jesse Bates is a part of it. But you're right that if something were to happen to Bates, like there's a great quote from Peyton Manning's old offensive coordinator at the Indianapolis Colts when a beat reporter asked him, "Hey, we noticed the backup didn't get any reps with the first team offense. Is there a plan if Peyton Manning gets injured?" And the offensive coordinator goes, "If 18 goes down, we're fucked. We don't practice fucked." So, yeah, there's not a great plan if Jesse Bates goes down. You just can't see that happen. And maybe a midseason signing happens at that stage. But I'm definitely on board with the idea of adding Eddie Jackson because I agree that he is a really good safety in the NFL that had some bad down seasons in Chicago, but he was pretty good the last 2 years. His just cap hit was too big for Chicago to hold on to him. My burner, Matthew Petey fan. Petey is something. And I don't, Petey is the go. I don't know where that picture is from, and I'm kind of concerned that I don't recognize that picture. Who will be the sack leader in 2024-2025 season? I'll go with Arnold Ebiketie. That's kind of the vanilla answer. He had 6 sacks last year. That was third on the team, right? You had Bud Dupree and Calais Campbell tie for first with 6.5. But I'll go with Ebiketie. He's going to be in for a much larger role this year as a true pass rusher. I think he can go from 6 sacks to 8, maybe 8.5, as long as he kind of continues on that trend. Next question coming in from Trucker Mike 404. How many picks will Jesse Bates have this year, and who would be a Pro Bowler from the Falcons? Jesse Bates had 6 interceptions last year. What's depressing is that made up 8 total interceptions by the Falcons last year. So the thing with interceptions is I don't know if there's a stat that's more up and down than interceptions. Like yards, touchdowns, they tend to be pretty consistent-ish year to year. Ups and downs, but interceptions can go way up and down. I'll say Jesse Bates has 4 picks this year, right? I don't know if he can get to 6 again. Sometimes you just need the ball to bounce your way, and you also need to go up against bad quarterbacks. And if the Falcons don't play a bunch of backup quarterbacks, because last year half of the NFL lost their starting quarterback, if this year all 32 teams keep their starters or close to it, you may not get so many errant passes that a good safety can pick off. So I'll put 4 picks for Jesse Bates. And who would be a Pro Bowler? Last year, Bates and Chris Lindstrom were the only Pro Bowlers. I'm going to toss in Drake London and Bijan Robinson. Those 4 guys make the Pro Bowl this year. ABC, a Cubs fan. Say a Suzuki fan, it looks like. Do you think Caleb McGarry will stay after this year? Caleb McGarry signed a 3-year contract, right? Was it? 3-year contract. It was pretty team-friendly, too, for the way he played his final season after the Falcons did not pick up. Yeah, 3-year, $34 million contract. So Caleb McGarry is under contract for 2024 and 2025. The team can get out of it after this season with just a $2 million dead cap hit. I think there is a world where the Falcons maybe do move on from Caleb McGarry a year early if they don't see enough pass blocking improvement. Caleb McGarry, like most right tackles in his defense, is a run blocker first, pass blocker second. But there's going to be way more passing in the new offense than under the previous one. So it just may not be a very good schematical fit, right? It's not leaning into the strengths. So that could be a reason as to why maybe the Falcons move on from Caleb McGarry if the pass rushing or pass blocking is lacking this year. Last question coming in from Tony Wright. I have full confidence in strong safety Richie Grant and DeMarco Hellams. I think we'll see a lot of 3 safety looks from the Falcons this year. I mean, I say that because that's what the Rams did, but it also is a good time to remind myself and you guys that just because the new coaching staff did a lot of that at the previous stop in their coaching career doesn't mean that's going to be exactly what happens this year or with their new team, because they are hopefully leaning into their new team's strengths and skill sets, right? So they've got better linebackers than I think they do at safety. Like, Jesse Bates is by far the best of both position groups combined. But after Jesse Bates, the next best player is probably Caden Ellis, and then Troy Anderson, Nate Landman, and then Richie Grant and DeMarco Helms kind of falling after the three linebackers, at least in my eyes. So who are you taking off the field to replace? Who are you taking off the field to get Richie Grant on? I sure hope you're not like subbing out Troy Anderson and Nate Landman just to get an extra safety. So that's where I kind of question even myself about, is it going to be a lot of three safety looks? Because your three safeties aren't that great. The top one is. Just the next two are, I don't know if it's not mean, but like average at best. Maybe DeMarco Helms just shocks the world this year. But I'm a lot more confident in Ellis, Landman, and Anderson as a trio than the three safeties, because all they've really got going for them is Jesse Bates, and then hopeful emergence of DeMarco Helms, and then a bounce back year hopefully from Richie Grant. But notice all the hopefuls in the safeties, and they're a lot more confident sounding tune in my linebacker breakdown. That's why I'm not absolute about that. All right, that will do it for us on today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to our mailbag. We're going to sign off. Make sure to subscribe, like the video, and we'll see you all later. All right. We got Super Chat. We got a couple Super Chats rolling in. Grand Limousine couldn't stay away. I love it. We got a Super Chat from Grand Limousine and from Rydell. Let's go, Rydell. Rydell, thoughts for Penix's pick today? National media seems to like it. All right, thoughts on the Michael Penix pick today following the NFL draft, because I know you can only put so many characters in a $2 Super Chat. The national media seems to like it a lot more. I always view post-draft reactions a little bit on the sillier side, kind of like when a college player's stock goes up and down in the pre-draft process when they haven't played a snap of football since December. It's like, what about a guy in March makes you like him less when he hasn't done anything since you liked him a lot in December? Nothing's changed since then. You've just had too much time on your hands, and you decided, well, to keep things interesting, let's tear this guy down to build this guy up. I think the same can be said about draft picks. It's like once the pick is made, all of a sudden everyone looks at it through a different lens. And sure, there's an element of some players will fit better with other teams based on their scheme, their offense, and the other personnel they have to work with. But anyone think like the Falcons had a scheme or personnel perfect for Michael Penix before the draft? I didn't. I didn't think like that's a great roster for Michael Penix. It's tailor-made to him. Now, no. I think Penix is a really good quarterback. Penix was 4th on my QB list going into the draft. Caleb, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix. But the national media, I'm sure they're warming up to it because it's the offseason. And you just can't say, I have no opinion because nothing's changed. That's not going to cut it in the media world, right? You got to have something. You got to drive clicks. I know that. I'm part of it. But I know it's a very long-winded response. But, yeah, I don't think you can change your opinion on the pick until we see some training camp and preseason. We can't be changing minds over flag football practices. Everyone should look good in there. If you don't, that's a problem. And Michael Penix has looked pretty good from what I've heard. But all the attention has been on Kirk Cousins. Rydell, I do appreciate your question. Looks like a really cute dog as well. Thank you so much for watching. Grand Limousine with a $20 Super Chat. Let's go. Grand Limousine, an OG supporter here at the channel. I'm looking forward to watch parties. Week 1 against the Steelers. I know Grand Limousine will be hanging out with us, so you're the man. Appreciate you so much. I like this question from Matthew Petey fan. Who you got, Mavs or Celtics? If we get another Super Chat, we'll keep the show going. If not, we will end with this just question right off the cuff. Who do you got in the NBA Finals, Mavericks or Celtics? I'm going to go with the, drumroll please, in 5 games, Boston Celtics. I think the Celtics, while they have had a Mickey Mouse path to the finals, and that's through no fault of their own, they just line up against whoever's opposite side of them. You know who also had a Mickey Mouse path last year? The Denver Nuggets. They played the 7-seeded Lakers in the Western Conference Finals.
That is a good point.
Like they played the 8-seed. Remember, they played the T-Wolves the first round.
Yeah.
And they swept them, I believe.
Yeah.
Or they won in 5. And then they played the Suns the next round.
Which I thought was going to be a great series.
And it wasn't.
And it was not.
And then they played the Lakers. And then when they get to the finals, who do they play? The Miami Heat, the 8 seed. They played 7 and 8 seed the last 2 rounds.
I just think it's so funny that everyone's short-term memory loss of not knowing that the Nuggets, like we just said, also had an easy schedule.
And they won.
But it's like, no. They're really good, though.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what about the Celtics? It's like, no, they're not good. It's an easy schedule. It's like, well, you got to be both ways.
And I'm usually the king of calling out Mickey Mouse paths. And I did that for the Celtics. And it's not the same because the Mavs have Luka, the best player in the world probably right now. Like Jokic is 1, and then Luka's pretty close behind.
Yeah.
But that's a very different undertaking than what the Nuggets had to deal with Jimmy Butler and the Heat last year. But still, I think the Celtics are the better team. And while they haven't really been tested all that much, and that kind of shows in their record against the spread throughout the playoffs, I still think they'll take care of business.
Yeah, I agree.
Who do you have?
I got the Mavs.
You got the Mavs, and how many?
7.
7.
It's going to be a long series.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking about, Kyrie Irving going back to Boston it's what everyone's talking about. But
that's a good point.
Everyone thinks he's going to.
No one's talking about Kristaps. Revenge Dallas. I know.
Revenge Dallas.
It sounds fun. I'm busting your
balls. It's not as. Kyrie was sticking the middle finger up behind his
head
to all the Boston fans.
I know. Yeah. The other thing is, I feel like every so often in sports, you kind of get those like random appearances in the finals that create really good sports trivia down the line. Mm-hmm. And I smell some good sports trivia with what Western Conference team made the NBA Finals in 2024 and did not make the playoffs again for the next 5 years. And that's not going to be the case for the Mavs.
Yeah. No.
But like, you know what I mean? Like, just kind of seems like a little blimp. Like, whoa, where'd they come from?
Yeah.
They're the 5 seed. The West was really tough this year. They've got Luka. It's not like, unworldly that the Mavericks are in the finals, but the Celtics won like 64 games this year.
I think
I'm going to go with the Celtics.
Looking into the future, the Thunder are going to be scary.
I like this from Jack. I want Hank tears. I'm looking forward to soggy sorrows from Hank if the Celtics do lose. That's a good point. I didn't look at it through that lens. I am a religious part of my take listener, and the funny thing is, and we'll end on this, I am about 3 months behind in PMT. I do not skip ahead, but I don't have a very long commute. So I only get to listen to like 15, 20 minutes on my way to work and then 15, 20 minutes on my way back, and I don't catch up in time, and then the episodes start stacking up. So you don't want to know how far behind I am right now. AWL, indeed. All right, we will sign off. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. I love talking with you all every Thursday afternoon. So if you enjoyed it, give us a like, share it to a friend, a family member, and we'll see you all later.